Joining me now is Cleveland.com Browns reporter Ashley Bastock. So excited to have another Ohioan on here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad we could connect. I know it took a little work on our parts to find a time that aligned for both of us, but I'm glad we got something down.
Definitely, especially during a crazy time for the Browns, especially at quarterback, wide receiver. I can't wait to get into all of it, but yesterday it was reported that Baker Mayfield would not practice. He did make an appearance today. What was the vibe around him? Do you think that it's hopeful he'll play, or what are you thinking about Baker right now?
Yeah, I think right now all indications are that he is going to try and play through this. And there's been some speculation about, I think anyone who's even half paid attention to the Browns this year knows that Baker Mayfield is pretty beat up at this point in the season. We've got multiple injuries going on. I think he's hurt both of his knees. He has a foot thing going on. Of course, that shoulder that caused him to miss the Thursday night game a few weeks ago. But Kevin Stefanski, said today, if a player is healthy enough to play, we're going to let him play. We're not going to sit somebody down to rest them. And Baker Mayfield said he still plans to play too, but he did admit this is the most beat up that he's ever been, at least since being in the NFL.
That's right. He also said he doesn't think anyone really seems to care.
Yeah.
And you said it is expected that he'll play on Sunday, but you're there day in, day out. What are the observations? Do you think that, his time is running short? There seems to be a lot of frustration around this quarterback position. I mean, it's been a long time thing for Cleveland, but there were high hopes for Baker, and it seems like the cord's getting cut short here.
I think there's a lot of frustrations, especially for the fans who, everyone thought this was going to be such a promising year, especially they came, I think so close to making the Super Bowl last year. I think a lot of people felt like they should. And the players, of course, and the coaching staff, everyone in the building had high expectations too. So I don't think anyone expected them to be a 500 team. It's funny, I was just on our in-house show kind of talking about the same thing. And I'm like, I kind of like to be a little bit more conservative in my analysis or assessment of these situations, especially as the new person on the beat, right? But I think what is clear is no one has to rush to an extension with him right now. And in some ways, I think it would be kind of unfair a little bit to make a rush to judgment like that, given these injuries. And I'm a big believer that injuries don't excuse everything, right? You look at the game against the Patriots, no matter how hurt he is, if he's okay enough to play, you would think the offense is working a little bit better if he's okay to be out there, and that the pass game would be a little bit better. But all that being said, I don't think you can fully discount them in terms of some of the issues he's been having this year, like looking downfield, these vertical passes, getting that ball on target to his, playmakers in the pass game. So I think there's a lot at play here that it's a really, really tough call now. And I definitely get why frustrations are, coming from the players a little bit, that we're starting to see that, and from, outside spectators as well.
Right. And Baker's last outing was pretty rough. He hasn't been too consistent, but last week he was 11 of 21 passing for 73 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then he goes out with a hard hit. There's, like you said, there's a lot of frustrations here. And do you think that there's some issues going on in the locker room, or do you think that frustration is hitting them on the field? That's what may be impacting them.
I don't know if I think that there's some issues in the locker room. I really do think for, the last few weeks since I've started working here, I do think especially that shoulder injury was really limiting him for a while. And after that Bengals game, which obviously that was a night and day performance compared to the Patriots game we saw this past week. But, he mentioned that he felt like he was a little bit more adjusted to that harness at that point. And we kind of saw that, right? I do think another huge missing piece with this pass game is not having Kareem Hunt out there. Ever since Kareem was in college, he was always one of those types of running backs that was just such a big threat in the pass game. And I think when he's out there, it opens up a lot of things for the offense as well, and he can do damage on his own. So I think that's all a part of it. I think some of the lack of downfield shots was that shoulder. But again, not making excuses for him. I think even if the injuries are impacting him, they have to, as coaches, and Baker has to as a quarterback, kind of demand to be put in a position where he can succeed. He needs to, talk to Kevin Stefanski, talk to Alex Van Pelt and say, you know what, this isn't working. Here's what I can do. Here's what I'm having trouble with. We need to figure something else out.
Right. You talked about the running game, and the passing game has also been a concern. Jarvis Landry talked about how much he's missing OBJ around the facility, his longtime buddy, and that was clearly a dramatic departure. But how did you see that departure transpire? Because it did seem like OBJ was upset for some time. Maybe it was that frustration, but how did you see that one pan out?
Yeah, so it's definitely crazy. I started at cleveland.com at the end of October. So all of the
Oh,
OBJ stuff was my second week on the job. Odell Beckham Sr. posted that video, I believe my second Tuesday at work. So it was very quick for me. I never even got to hear Odell talk. But I really do think, I think he was only targeted like 2 or 3 times in that Steelers game, and it's a loss, and you only scored 10 points. Like, I think that was just such a breaking point for him. And Myles Garrett basically said as much that Friday before the Bengals game, that when you're a star wide receiver, there's some expectations that come with that, right?
Mhm.
And of course, the flip side of that is Odell, hasn't, I don't think, played to the standard that he wanted. His whole time he's been in Cleveland. And you kind of have to throw out that Freddie Kitchens year, his first year here. He got hurt last year, obviously, and then this was. I think that was also pretty hard on him. But I think overall, he was the guy that was so loved in that locker room, not just by Jarvis Landry, but, you talk to just about anyone on this team. I think John Johnson III was the one who said we would welcome him back with open arms as all of this was going on before he was ultimately waived. So I do think that was definitely, I was so curious how they were going to come out at that Bengals game and how Jarvis Landry would respond. And, Jarvis hasn't had the kind of production I think that he would want since he came back from his injury. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to keep progressing as well.
Yeah, Landry expressed a little bit of the same concerns about, hey, I'm not getting in the ball. He said that earlier this week.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate the passing attack? They're ranked 26th right now in the NFL with 209.7 yards per game in a year where, we both said there was hopes for a Super Bowl run. So
Yeah.
obviously there's some struggles on offense. So what do you think the issue is?
I think so much of it is just not looking downfield. Like if you watch how the Patriots defense played them, they were not accounting for any kind of downfield looks. They just did not care. They knew the Browns were not going there. So that's bad, right? When you take away that whole element of your offense and teams are now like, well, they're going to run, or Baker's going to throw a little 5-yard screen pass and we're going to be able to defend that pretty easily because we know that deep shot probably isn't coming. So again, I just think I've been saying for weeks, like I don't have the Pro Football Focus numbers in front of me, but they haven't attempted many deep balls, which is, I think 20 or more yards on there. And really, I think this offense really just changes when they are looking for that. And I think it overall makes them more versatile and more successful as a group.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, defense, it wasn't as questionable as the offense, but that last week there were concerns, and there's obviously players who are banged up. What update can you give us on the defense heading into week 11?
So the biggest thing I'm watching for, I think Mac Jones, rightfully so, got a lot of the attention, the praise from Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing for me that was a surprise was how they performed against the run, because their season worst performance as a defense before the Patriots game came against the Cardinals. They gave up 144 yards. Against the Patriots, this defense gave up 184 yards. So it just was bad all around. And I think Mac Jones, like I said, rightfully so, got some of the credit for carving up the defense the way he did. But I think going into the Lions game, looking at how much they run the ball, looking at how much they ran against the Steelers last week, I really think it's a chance for this defense to redeem itself a little bit, because I think they were the 3rd ranked running defense going into last week, and they were giving up 84.8 yards per game. So really, really uncharacteristic outing there that I definitely think should be an easy fix.
Yeah, it did seem like, credit to the Patriots. It wasn't all Cleveland, but hey, they're going through things right now, but they do have a great chance to bounce back up against the Lions, who have not won a game yet. They did get a tie last week, but their quarterback, Jared Goff, also didn't practice today. The Browns favored at home by 10.5. Do you think they can build some momentum on this one and get past 500 right now?
They should be able to. If they can't, everyone probably has bigger problems like at this point, right? But yeah, like you said, we don't know if Jared Goff's going to play, as he's trying to come back, work through an injury of his own. Obviously, they're still searching for that first win, and Otherwise, I think without that tie for the Steelers, a lot of people were like, are they going to go 0-17 now and make some history there? But really, I think for me, it's all about getting that mentality back as a team, like getting Baker Mayfield to play with some of that swagger that I think he's been missing a lot this year, as he deals with those injuries, because that's what makes Baker so good. And you saw it time and time again last year. Like, I want the Baker Mayfield running down the locker room hallway after the Steelers game yelling, "The Browns is the Browns," like that's what I think makes him such a threat offensively. I think he's a leader on this team. So if the guys see him doing that, then it kind of gets contagious, to borrow a word from Jarvis Landry, right? From his famous Hard Knocks rant. So I think for me, like against Lions, like, we can sit here all day and talk about X's and O's against Lions, but on paper, just about every way, Cleveland should win this game. So it's about, if you go into it knowing that, and that you are the better team, X's and O's wise on paper, then what's important to gain from this before you go to those 2 Baltimore games with that bye in between?
Yeah, it's almost more to lose in this game because you lose to the the team that can't win. So there's more to lose than almost to gain. But for Browns fans out there, as Ohioans, I love the resilience that Cleveland has, and they always have hope in their team. But what upside can we give to them, to Browns fans right now? Like, what is something that they can take with them to get them past this hump, and something to look forward to, something to look out for?
Yeah, I think the best thing that the Browns have going for them is that the NFL this year, but the AFC and the AFC North in particular, are so unpredictable and so tight right now that everyone is at about like 5 or 6 wins, like I mean, they're not out of anything yet. Now, those 2 Baltimore games are really, really important. You cannot under any circumstances lose both of those, and you have to take care of business against the Bengals at home later in the season, and you have to beat the Steelers at home. So there is still a chance that they could win the AFC North. Like, it's not, the year is not totally done for anything, even though it is disappointing to once again be a 500 team. They're lucky that this conference right now, especially, is as tight as it is, that this past week, the team that had the best result was the Bengals, and they had a bye.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's devastating to think about, especially for Ohioans.
Yeah.
But yes, there is a big upside. They're playing against the Lions. This should be a win. So we're looking forward to that. I really appreciate you jumping on, giving us so much insight on what on earth has been going on in Cleveland over the past few weeks. So I appreciate all the insight you gave, and keep us posted on everything going on in Cleveland. We're always trying to keep up with you guys out there.
Thanks. We'll do.
Thank you so much again. Have a good one.